So this team has a lot of needs. We just traded away D'Angelo Russell, our most valuable expiring contract at $18.7 million. So we can't even use that trade chip to maybe kill two or three birds with one stone of having like marginal contracts in the size of $5 to $6 million. So with that said, we only have like the expirings of Jackson Hayes, Cam Reddish, JHS. I guess you could talk about Christian Wood. I guess you could maybe pawn Gabe Vincent's $11 million off on someone because he's only on for next year. Rui Hachimura, maybe you trade him as well. The team has so many needs. Where do you prioritize? Like, what positions would you prioritize for the Lakers moving forward? You talked about how we just need to lean in all defense, but at the same time, we've also talked about, well, we also need a primary point guard. Let's say the Lakers have two bullets. They're going to get two more players. What templates of players are you looking at? And then I just have a question for you with regards to specific names after you're done.
So, and this is just, I think there's like a few ways that you could approach it. How I would address it with the two bullets is, and this is, I know we said the primary initiator, but I really do think we need more than anything else an elite defensive guard and an elite defensive big man. That's what I would be prioritizing. I don't know that we could get both of those with the limited assets that we have. Um, because it's like people are not giving away defense at this point. But that would be my preference. I would lean all the way aggressively, all the way into defense, hope that LeBron and AD, who, by the way, seem to want to just ISO and shoot through our sets anyway. And like a fair number of our sets are just like a lot of running around to get AD and ISO on the wing. Like it is like kind of nonsense, right? So like let them try to hold their own on offense. Let us try to replicate 2019-20 and have a system where like everybody else sort of scores. I mean, ideally we still keep Austin, so like there's your third, I guess, scorer. Um, uh, but that's what I would do, because I think the problem is it's not just like get a elite defensive big man and get a primary initiator. These guys have to be so good, or so much better, I guess, than the rest of our rotation players, that our staff like justifies playing them. And so, I assume in this scenario Gabe Vincent is out, but like the type of defensive guard I'm thinking of has to be so much better at overall net impact than Austin Reeves that you actually are forced to play him over Austin Reeves. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, and I just don't know that there are that many guys out there who fit that mold.
So I have a combo for you. Ready? Of the two templates that you just listed,
Yeah.
would you be okay with Bruce Brown? That's the defensive guard you talked about, and going back to the Jonas Valanciunas well, because I think salary wise that would work. You ship Gabe Vincent off to Washington for Jonas Valanciunas, and I hate to downsize in this way if we have to use Rui Hachimura's contract to get Bruce Brown. But let's say no first go out in this trade somehow. Seconds and JHS to Toronto. I mean, let's not think about the specifics, but would a Bruce Brown Jonas Valanciunas combo work? Jonas Valanciunas is in everybody's mind, and the front office seems to just want to shut fans up these days and be like, you've been talking about DFS for 3 years, here's DFS, and they'll probably do the same. You've been talking about Jonas Valanciunas for 2 years, here's Jonas Valanciunas. But your thoughts on Bruce Brown, Jonas Valanciunas?
So I think I would. This is the type of trade where like early in the season I probably would have said no.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think I would now. I think like Jonas is not like the elite defensive big that I'm thinking of, but he sort of plugs the like girth void that we have. And frankly, I don't know. I don't know if others would approach it this way. My inclination is whoever we get, I want to start that person with AD. I'm trying to go back to like,
Mhm.
let's play two bigs, especially if you have a big like Jonas who can shoot a three occasionally. Um, and he complements, I think, AD on defense because he's a big body. He can muscle people for rebounds, but he also you have AD to sort of counter his sort of deficiencies on that end. But I think trading Rui for a guy like Bruce Brown early season, I'd be like, I don't know. Now that we have DFS, I just feel like if that's the move and it's like we continue to want to reshape this roster, I think Bruce Brown, if he's healthy and is able to contribute at the level of, what he did maybe 2 seasons ago, then I think that's probably a trade I would make because, you play Jonas off the bench with our bench lineup, and if our bench lineup is DFS and Vanderbilt and I I'm trying to and Bruce Brown and whoever like maybe Max moves to the bench. I'm not sure, but if it's Jonas and a bunch of defensive minded guys, I feel like a little bit better about how that lineup holds its own defensively.
Mm,
And I think Bruce Brown, like Rui, I love Rui. I think he's like a really fun player. I think he's like honestly pretty underrated by NBA Twitter generally, and I feel like he's done a pretty solid job of filling in the role that we wanted him to fill in, or trying to, I should say. But he just is who he is. He's limited
mm,
defensively. He's constantly lost. So many of our defensive breakdowns are due to
yeah.
people scrambling to account for like him just being a complete space cadet. I saw somebody like compare him to Vladimir Radmanovich, which I thought was like a really apt
Sure.
comparison where like, yeah, this dude could come out and sometimes drop 28. And so that's why everybody was all excited when we signed him, in the Kobe years after like years and years of whiffing on free agents. It's like we get Vlad Rad and it's like, all right, cool. We're cooking with gas now. We got this guy who could give us some offense. And then it's like you get him in practice and you're like, oh, okay, I see why you were kind of floating around at this price because
Yeah.
if you played defense at all, like if you had even a little bit of IQ on that end, you would be like considered a fairly elite player.
I mean, I think he does. I think Rui's the type of player, though, that literally game to game, maybe minute to minute within a game, always has to be handheld and spoon fed. I think that just comes from his upbringing and like coming into basketball late. All right. Before we take it to break, just wanted to make sure that you guys all know that Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes during the NFL playoffs. Now, unfortunately, the Los Angeles Rams got eliminated from the playoffs in heartbreaking fashion over the weekend. But the NFL playoffs is still raging on as we race to the Super Bowl. Go Eagles. Oops, did I say that out loud? Anyways, Underdog is the place to play for fantasy sports. Which players are going off and which ones are ice cold? With their pick'em game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your player's stats, i.e., yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and more. Cook up some fire entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all playoffs long. Create entries with all football picks or mix and match across your other favorite sports, like obviously basketball. Underdog is the only pick'em platform that puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the win now button to cash out whenever you want. So, as it pertains to Lakers props, for the Lakers game against the Wizards this week, I would personally take the higher on whatever Austin Reeves assist prop is, especially if it's at 5.5 assists, take the higher. Austin Reeves has been struggling with the ball recently and hasn't been diming the ball as well as he has been earlier this month. So I think he'll want to get back on track against the very lowly Wizards, who shouldn't give him too much trouble ball handling wise. So yeah, take Austin Reeves higher than 5.5 assists, 5 assists, maybe even 6 assists if that's what the line ends up being. So what are you waiting for? Underdog is the best place to play Pick'em. So download the app, sign up with promo code LEGACY, and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's promo code LEGACY, sign up, and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 years or older, 19 years or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 years or older in Colorado for some games, 21 years or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado for some games. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right, so we are back. Rui aside, what are your thoughts on this? Is another popular big man name, but kind of like in the opposite direction. It's like not defensive focused, but your thoughts on fight on USC Trojan Nikola Vucevic? Because I've heard this name come up more and more. And I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not on the Vucevic bandwagon at
Okay.
all. I mean, I like him as a player in the same way that I like Rui. I mean, he's like an exciting player. He does a ton offensively.
He rebounds.
He rebounds. But he's like a counting stats guy. Like I never viewed Vucevic, and I liked him at USC too. He was there actually, I think when both of us were there. And
I think so, yeah.
yeah, and so like I followed his career, and he's developed really well and had a really nice career for himself. But he is like limited defensively, right? Like Vucevic is the type of guy who his offense needs to be like Nikola Jokic levels for how bad his defense is.
Yeah.
And you're just not getting it there. Like at least with Jonas, it's like it's less of a cost commitment. Like you can get him with Gabe. He adds some girth. He just adds some stuff that you don't have from the big position. Like what we don't really need is a big to come off the bench and score because or even if he plays with AD like it's just like a slightly bigger version of Rui. You run into like the same problems you have with Rui. Honestly maybe even worse because at least Rui can kind of hang with guys when he gets switched on the perimeter, but
Yeah.
Vucevic like absolutely can't, and he can't really protect the rim either.
Okay, let's go back down the slider scale and go the opposite end, but with a starter level center. What about Jakob Pertl? Would you start him next to AD? Because then you have the problem of he can't space the floor, but he can hang defensively way better than any of the centers that we've mentioned.
So I would start him with AD. um
Mm,
I wouldn't play him a ton of minutes with AD. I might stagger it. Um, but I like the idea of starting games. I'm gonna go off on a slight tangent. I like the idea of starting games with two bigs and setting that tone and not
sure.
burning AD's energy in the first 10 minutes of the game, or and then 10 minutes is too long. First 5 minutes of the game, like banging with bigs in the paint. You know what I mean? I feel like AD plays almost the whole first quarter. I would start a guy like Jakob. I would eat the first 5 minutes of a game offensively and just say, like, it is what it is. We need to try to create through this. I think between LeBron, AD, and Austin, we have enough guys who can generate offense, even with poor spacing, and I would just go from there. And then after that, you can stagger Jakob and AD. But Jakob, yeah, again, Jakob is elite defensively. He's not great offensively, but he can set screens. And the one issue he has over like a guy like Walker Kessler is he's huge, but he's not as much of like a lob threat. I would have to see their weights side by side,
Yeah.
but it just feels like Walker Kessler takes up so much space. Like if you throw the ball anywhere near the rim, that dude's not even that athletic in the traditional sense, and like he hammers everything in there. But Jakob is a little bit.
Yep.
I feel like he's knocked off balance a little bit more easily, maybe.
Yeah. I think Walker Kessler is obviously the dream, which is why we're not even talking about him at this point. I think a
Yeah.
good happy medium out of all the bigs that we've talked about would be like if you can get Kelly Olynyk, who we've talked about, also on the Toronto Raptors. There's something there with the Toronto Raptors, is what I'm trying to say. And to your point about starting off games with two bigs, which is again something we famously did back in 2019-20, but the Memphis Grizzlies are actually doing this right now with Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson. They're starting a two big look. Whether they'll carry that on to the playoffs, I don't know. But I think the Oklahoma City Thunder, when Chet Holmgren comes back, are going to start a two big look, right? With Chet and Isaiah Hardenstein, whether you consider Chet a big or not. But yeah, so those are kind of our options. If the Lakers, so if the Lakers were to trade their first round pick, is there any game changer out there? Not talking about an ancillary role player that you would actually view as needle moving. So, for example, the Zach LaVine dream is gone, I think, because D'Lo's contract is out the door. But would you be open to Brandon Ingram for the first round pick if we can cobble up Rui's salary with Gabe's? And then another player that I've recently been thinking about is who I think would be worth that first is another one of Brandon Ingram's teammates who might be available depending on what the Pelicans want to do. But DeJounte Murray, what are your thoughts on DeJounte Murray and BI back into play here? Although that would be our one bullet, I think. That would be it.
Um, Brandon Ingram is like I don't know that that's the type of player that I'd be looking at. DeShonte Murray, I just think I would need to see a little bit more um, what the metrics look like, because I think the hesitation I had with DeJounte when the talks emerged last year was like, I don't want to spend two firsts on this guy. Like we can't blow our entire asset base on a guy like DeJounte Murray, who I think is really good, but is not worth selling the farm for. And if it
Yeah.
costs one first now, like if New Orleans is like in full rebuild, they're like, forget about Brandon Ingram, but they're like, DeJounte Murray trade, let's build something. Um, we're willing to sell him for one first to recoup some of our loss and just start over. That may be something I can get behind. If anything, just because it's like he is like, in addition to being, I think, a better defensive, at least historically, a better defensive player than Austin, he's also just like a better primary initiator, and he's like a real point
Mhm.
guard. So I mean, it sort of helps on that end too. But I think getting him like would his salary, like that would require like Rui and Gabe, I think. So then it's like you're not
Yeah.
left with a whole lot else to do anything else.
Yeah, out of the two, I would prefer DeJounte Murray just because he gives you that primary creation and downhill attacking. He's a little bit more athletic as well. Um, I would also go to the Chicago Bulls and offer them up the first for Kobe White or Ayo Dosunmu. I don't think the Bulls would do it, but I think the Lakers should at least inquire. Wouldn't you agree? Because I would prefer Kobe White or Ayo Dosunmu to DeJounte Murray at this point.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't think the Bulls are moving either of those guys.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right. With that said, I think the Lakers are going to have to sit tight for a little bit with this roster and see how things go. With that said, Tommy, I will catch you later.
Peace.
See ya.